2024 was an absolutely massive year for Bitcoin. From the dominance of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, to it becoming a talking point in the US election, all the way to the incoming president vocally supporting a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Today we recap the most significant milestones that Bitcoin reached this year, and we look ahead to what we might have in store in 2025 and beyond. And stick around till the end because I'll give my personal predictions for 2025 and what we can expect over the rest of the decade. Well, 2024 is coming to a close, and what a historic year it's been for Bitcoin. On January 1st, 2024, Bitcoin was around $43,000, and the outlook for the year was cautiously optimistic, driven by the anticipation of the fourth halving event and growing momentum of institutional adoption, fueled primarily by the pending approval of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. And on January 10th, 2024, the SEC officially approved the listing and trading of 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs. This approval paved the way for major financial institutions, including BlackRock and Fidelity, to launch their Bitcoin ETFs, attracting substantial investments and further legitimizing Bitcoin as a mainstream asset. Financial behemoth BlackRock and their CEO Larry Fink began shouting its praise as a legitimate store of value and financial asset.
But I'm a believer in it because I do believe it is an alternative source for wealth holding. I believe it goes up if the world is more frightened, if people have fearful of geopolitical risk, they're fearful of their own risk. It's no different than what gold represented over thousands of years. It is a asset class that protects you.
Right. And thus, the institutional floodgates were opened. The ETFs quickly became the fastest growing in history, and the Bitcoin price, for the first time ever, reached a new all-time high before the halving, when it soared above $70,000 in March of 2024. Although the big price surge in the first quarter of 2024 was significant, it became clear early on that much of the new capital flowing into the ETFs was retail, as large institutions and pension funds are much more slow-moving to gain approval to allocate. Michael Saylor made famously bullish remarks at the Bitcoin Atlantis conference in Madeira in March, where he explained this new era of Bitcoin that began with the ETF approvals.
We're in the Bitcoin gold rush era, and it started in January of 2024, and it will run till about November of 2034. It's a 10-year. And the reason how many people know what happened in November of 2034? It's an important date, If you pull Clark Moody's dashboard, you'll see that. In November of 2034, 99% of all the Bitcoin will have been mined. And the last 1% comes out over the next 100 years. So for all practical purposes, stock to flow becomes irrelevant. The stock to flow ratio of Bitcoin is infinity in 2034. It becomes noise. At the beginning of the gold rush, no bank could custody Bitcoin, no institutional investor could buy Bitcoin, no Wall Street trading firm, no investment company could handle Bitcoin, and it was unclear whether that ever would happen. That was a binary. And when those spot ETFs were approved, that created a fire or an avalanche. The genie's out of the bottle. It doesn't matter who's elected president next. It doesn't matter who's the next head of the SEC. It doesn't matter. No politician's opinion, no banker opinion, no regulator opinion matters after that date. That was the most consequential thing that kicked off the gold rush.
Now, I want you to put a pin in that mind-blowing stat that 99% of the Bitcoin will be mined in 2034, with the final 1% being mined over the following 100 years. We'll come back to that stat a bit later. Moving on, in April of 2024, Bitcoin's fourth halving event occurred, where its issuance rate was cut in half for the fourth time in its history. The issuance rate went from 6.25 Bitcoin per block down to 3.125 Bitcoin per block. Now, each halving event marks a significant milestone as it reinforces Bitcoin's scarcity and contributes to its increasing economic value over time. This mechanism ensures Bitcoin's deflationary nature and solidifies its role as sound money. This fourth halving was made even more significant by the fact that for the first time ever, Bitcoin's inflation rate dropped below that of gold's. The gold supply inflates at between 1.5 and 2% per year. After the halving in April of 2024, Bitcoin's supply inflation rate dropped below 1%. But following the halving, the Bitcoin price chopped sideways for what seemed like forever. It hovered and bounced around the $60,000 mark for 9 months straight. But although the price was sideways, many bullish things were percolating in the background. For one, the US election race was heating up, and Bitcoin began to take center stage, as it came up as a prominent campaign issue across the political spectrum. Notably, then independent candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. and Republican nominee Vivek Ramaswamy began to promise favorable regulation and pro-Bitcoin policy. But things really started to heat up when leading Republican candidate Donald Trump openly endorsed Bitcoin in the spring. Trump went on to attend the largest Bitcoin conference in the world at Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville, even appearing as a keynote speaker.
This afternoon, I'm laying out my plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world, and we'll get it done. If crypto is going to define the future, I want to be mined, minted, and made in the USA. It's going to be. It's not going to be made anywhere else. And if Bitcoin is going to the moon, as we say, it's going to the moon, I want America to be the nation that leads the way. And that's what's going to happen.
In the speech, Trump also outlined plans to establish a national strategic Bitcoin stockpile and criticized the existing regulatory environment for being overly stringent. Trump even went as far as to hint at eliminating the US debt with Bitcoin in a Fox interview leading up to the election.
Who knows, maybe we'll pay off our $35 trillion, hand him a little crypto check, right? We'll hand him a little Bitcoin and wipe out our $35 trillion.
And in November of 2024, Donald Trump was elected president, and the Bitcoin price quickly began to rally, surging up through $90,000 in the week following the election. And on December 5th, Bitcoin surpassed 100,000 US dollars per coin for the first time ever. With promises of favorable regulation under a Trump presidency and even unanimous embrace from the new administration, coupled with the institutional unlock of the ETFs, the outlook for Bitcoin going into 2025 could not be more optimistic. Speaking of institutional unlock, Michael Saylor announced in October of this year his company MicroStrategy's plan to raise $42 billion of capital to buy more Bitcoin. And since then, he has been on a buying rampage, announcing huge Bitcoin purchases nearly every week. As of now, MicroStrategy holds 446,400 Bitcoin, and all signs point to the company accelerating their Bitcoin purchases as the bull run continues. So even as the Bitcoin price dips a bit to end a historic year, take a look at this chart from CNBC that shows Bitcoin returns in 2024 versus everything else. It's not even close, ladies and gentlemen. Plus, let's not forget that Bitcoin is now the 7th largest asset by market cap in the world. This thing is most definitely here to stay and is a force to be reckoned with. One often overlooked stat for Bitcoin is network hash rate, which measures the global computing power that secures the network through mining. 2024 was another monstrous year for network hash rate growth. To give some context, Bitcoin's hash rate hit 226 exahash for the first time in August of 2022. But in 2024 alone, miners added another 226 exahash. Talk about exponential growth. Bitcoin's hash rate has been going up in a straight line for years now, as it hovers around an incredible 800 exahash today. These insanely high numbers leave many to conclude that the nation-state hash wars have most likely already begun, and will only accelerate in 2025. So as we look forward to 2025 and beyond, what are some things we should be looking out for? Well, on January 3rd, defunct crypto exchange FTX will begin repaying $16 billion that it owes to creditors. This is bullish for Bitcoin, as it's being estimated that a large portion of that money will be reinvested into the asset, as creditors have been sitting on the sidelines since the exchange collapsed in November of 2022. And of course, on Monday, January 20th, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States, and his administration's Bitcoin framework will become more clear. There are rumors and inklings that he will sign a bill to solidify the plans for a U.S. strategic Bitcoin stockpile, or even add to it as a reserve. Senator Cynthia Lummis has famously already written a bill outlining an aggressive plan that would see the United States government through the Treasury Department buying 1 million Bitcoin over the next 5 years. Whether Trump is able to accomplish this or not is yet to be seen, but even announcing the plans to hold the 210,000 Bitcoin the government already has from seizure would be incredibly bullish and a signal to the countries around the world that they better start coming up with their own Bitcoin strategy if they haven't already. So all that we've seen through 2024 has led us to an unbelievably bullish setup for 2025 and beyond. As Saylor said in the earlier clip, we have just begun the Bitcoin gold rush era. Institutions, corporations, nation-states, and individuals globally now have until 2034 to accumulate Bitcoin before only 1% is left to be released on the market over the following 100 years. The increasing scarcity and the increasing demand for Bitcoin is about to go into overdrive, and no one is prepared for what happens next. Now, my personal opinion is that Bitcoin will surpass 200K in 2025 easily. And if Trump is able to get the Bitcoin reserve plan through Congress, the sky is the limit, and we can easily break through 500,000. Now, keep in mind that this is just my personal opinion and should be taken with a grain of salt. The takeaway from this video should be that Bitcoin has a very bright future ahead of it, and all the events of 2024 are just the setup for the fireworks that are to come over the next decade and beyond. So celebrate the new year by buying the dip with Swan. Go to swan.com or search for Swan Bitcoin in the App Store. Sign up and begin buying Bitcoin in minutes. Plus, you get your first $10,000 in Bitcoin purchases with 0 fees. Also, visit swan.com/card to sign up and get priority access to our newly announced premium Bitcoin rewards credit card. Also, a quick shout out to Mara, the largest publicly traded Bitcoin miner, for supporting this show and for helping make Bitcoin the world's most decentralized and secure monetary network. That's it for the year. Let me know where you think Bitcoin is headed in 2025 in the comments below. Like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel for more high signal Bitcoin content. Happy New Year, everyone, and remember, TikTok, next block.